Well, I think we all know that today we need to be focusing on leadership more than ever. That this is a time that we need leaders to be stepping up, that we need to have a new idea of how we can be leading as best as we can. I'm sure that you're familiar with Gallup and the research that they've been doing, and the fact that as the research is coming out of Gallup in terms of the state of the American workplace, we have a major problem in today's workplace. The fact that we have only 1/3 of American workers today that actually are engaged in what they do. 1/3. That's a really sad statistic to see how many people are not engaged at what they do. 1/2 of all workers in the workplace today are not engaged at what they do. That's pretty sad. They just show up. They put in the time. They get paid, but they lose so much in terms of not being engaged in what they do, and how much employers miss out on not having that full engagement in what they do. But not only do we have only 1/3 engaged and 1/2 not engaged, we have 1/6 of the American workplace today that is actively disengaged. And what that means is that they are actively biting the hand that feeds them. They are the ones that are causing the problems that you as a leader have to be dealing with. So what does that look like? If we were to pictorially represent what that looks like today as a boat with 6 people in that boat, we would have 2 people rowing. We'd have 3 looking at the scenery and 1 trying to sink the boat. That is a picture of the American workplace today. So what we need today is we need to have a better picture of how we can be leading. And so I did some research in terms of how we can actually see what is going on in the American workplace today. So I commissioned some research to go out to 589 people around the country, different socioeconomic status, different ethnicities, different regions of the country, to see what is going on here. And so I asked one open-ended question. I asked, what is the one thing? What is the one thing you wish your boss knew that they might not already know? What's that one thing? So I got some really interesting responses. And so other than the 26% who said nothing to the survey and the 8% who said, well, I'm really not sure, there were only 4% who said something other than the 4 major themes that popped from the research. That's right. There are 4 major themes that employees said that they wish their employers knew. And so those 4 major themes are insufficient appreciation, topping the list at 17%, insufficient appreciation. Secondly, inadequate morale and incompetent management and improper communication, all coming in at second place at 15%. So that's what we're dealing with right now. That is what employees wish their bosses knew. And so all this research that I commissioned actually then became the fodder for a book that I came out with called Dear Boss, What Your Employees Wish You Knew. But I didn't just stop there in terms of documenting all the problems that we see in our workplaces today. I actually said, well, what can we do to change that? What can we do to lead so that people are able to become the employees that they would want to be, that they would be able to act on the things that they want to have leadership acting on. So what I did was I wrote a book about what can we do to change that. So the book, Dear Boss, What Your Employees Wish You Knew, really recounts the whole concept of active leadership. How can we be leading our organizations to become better? And so I talk about the 4 principles of active leadership, the 4 tenets of active leadership. And what those really break down to be are tenderness, team, trust, and transparency. So they address the 4 issues that we found in the research about the lack of appreciation and morale and management and communication. So these 4 tenets of active leadership are tenderness, team, trust, and transparency. I know you're probably thinking, tenderness, what's up with that? That's a strange word to use in a business context. But let me tell you what tenderness looks like. It's really talking about how we can be treating others the way we would want to be treated if the situation were reversed. I know that's not a new concept. Jesus said that 2,000 years ago. But how much has that really been applied to our businesses today, to our organizations today? How can we be changing our workplaces based on how we treat others the way we would want to be treated? About 16 years ago, my father passed away. And that was a really difficult time in my life. If you've lost a loved one, you know what that feels like to go through that grieving process. But the organization I was working for at the time really focused on how they could be ministering to me at that time. They gave me bereavement time off. That's huge. That's really huge. So I didn't have to take off leave to be able to go grieve with my family during that time, to go down to Atlanta for the funeral for my father. That was really huge. But when we came back from the funeral, we decided we were going to have just a time for people who were in the D.C. area where I lived, who weren't able to come down to Atlanta for the funeral. We wanted to have a time where we could really celebrate my father's life and really be able to hear from everybody else and let them give an opportunity to express their condolences for us. So we had an evening where my mother, my sister, and I invited our family and friends and church friends and all that to come over and just give their concerns for what we were going through. And so the evening was just amazing, just constantly opening the door for all the people coming and wishing their concerns for us, giving their condolences to us. But of all the many times I opened the door that night, there's one time I went to that door that I will never forget. I went to that door, and there, standing on that doorstep, was my boss, Frank. He showed up outside of work hours to express how he was concerned about me in my dark hour, grieving for my father's passing. He probably took a few hours out of his day that he didn't need to do. But here, 16 years later, I remember what he did when he showed up there to express his concern for me. So that's what I mean by tenderness, treating others as you would want them to treat you if the situation were reversed. Secondly, I talk about team. Team really is about creating the kind of environment where people can come together and be the team that they would want to be, that you would want them to be, that they can function as the best that they can be as a unit. In preparing my book, Dear Boss, What Your Employees Wish You Knew, I had the opportunity to interview Mike Houston. Now, you may not know who Mike Houston is. If you're not in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, you probably don't. But in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, Mike Houston is a hero. Mike is the head coach of the James Madison University Dukes football team. And in his first year of coaching that football team, he brought the JMU Dukes to the national championship and won it. Now, that's pretty significant. But what's even more significant is they had not been at that level of play in about a dozen years. So here, in his first year as head coach, he brings the James Madison University Dukes to the national championship and wins it when they haven't been able to play at that level for about more than a decade. So I interviewed Mike, and I said, how did you do it? Mike, how did you bring your team to that level of performance? And he said that he made sure that everybody on the team was able to perform, that they were able to perform in their specific role, and that they were dependable in their role, and that they were also accountable to everybody else on the team in their role. They were able, dependable, and accountable, and that's what helped Mike be able to produce the team that he did that went on to win the national championship. So I've talked to you about tenderness. I've talked to you about team. Let me tell you about trust. Trust is about creating that kind of environment where you are able to trust your people and they can then trust you. So when you create that environment where they feel trusted, they are going to trust you as a leader all the more. And that is a powerful situation where you can be at. About maybe a decade ago or so, Zappos, the shoe company, was going to be taken over by Amazon. And Zappos had a great team culture in their organization, and everybody who was following that situation was concerned that Zappos was going to lose this team culture to being taken over by Amazon. But the CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, said, nope, that's not going to happen. He said that I guarantee you that we will be able to preserve the team culture within Zappos, even though we're going to be taken over by Amazon. It's going to be okay. And then a year later, he was able to report back and said, yes, we still have been able to keep this culture intact. And he said that to this day, if you can go look up on Amazon or or any other search engine or whatever, you can find about more information about Zappos insights and how they're exporting their team culture to anybody out there who really wants to listen. So Amazon trusted Tony Hsieh to be able to do that. And to their credit, he was able then to create or continue to create the Zappos culture to what it is today. So that's what I mean by trust. So I've talked to you about tenderness, I've talked to you about team, I've talked to you about trust. Let me tell you about transparency. In terms of transparency, that is about creating an environment where you can be real, you can be authentic, and then your team will then trust you all the more because you are authentic and you are real. I was at a conference not too long ago, similar to this one, and where there was a kid who was on the main stage here, and I had this bad attitude, and I said, you know, what can I learn from this kid who is about half my age, who's had half the life experience that I have? What could I possibly learn from him? Let me tell you, I was so wrong. I was so wrong about this guy that he took that stage in the very beginning. He had me in the palm of his hand because he told me about how real his experiences were in his situation of leadership and how authentic he was in terms of sharing his details of what he had gone through. When he was so authentic with me and everybody else in that room that he was transparent with us, we would listen to anything he said after that because we knew that we could trust him. And so your people are looking for the same thing from you. They're looking for tenderness. They're looking for team. They're looking for trust. They're looking for that transparency from you as a leader to become, so they can be what they would want to be, because your employees want you to know this. They want to be activated. They need you to lead them, to show them how. And here's how you can put this active leadership paradigm in place. It's a 4-step process of creating that culture, and I detail this in my book as well, about how you can create that culture, how you can put that active leadership paradigm into practice. And it's about 4 things. It's about what you teach, it's about what you celebrate, it's about what you model, and it's about what you permit. So in terms of what you teach, you have to think about the fact that you as a leader are teaching all the time. Whatever you do, you are teaching all the time. Whether it's a private conversation you're having with somebody, or if it's a staff meeting situation, you're teaching all the time. Even what you put on the walls of your organization, that's a teaching opportunity. Don't squander it. Make sure that you are using those opportunities for teaching. And then, in terms of what you celebrate, realize that there are things that you need to recognize in terms of the culture that you have. So make sure that you are recognizing things that need to be called out and shouted out and celebrated. And because then if you tell them of what you're wanting them to replicate within the organization, they'll want to do that when you reward them for doing it. And then when you reinforce that in front of everybody else and realize that when they realize how you are rewarding this behavior, they'll want to replicate that as well. So make sure you know what you're recognizing and rewarding and then reinforcing within your organization. So that's what I mean by what you celebrate. So we talked about what you teach, what you celebrate, then what you model. You cannot just expect that this will be done when you say to your team to do this kind of stuff. You have to model it yourself. And so what you say, you need to live as well. You need to be the leader that you would want to follow. Think through the people that you have followed, that you have appreciated their leadership, and be like that. Be the leader that you would want to follow. And then, as you're setting forward your standards for your organization, you know what? There are going to be times that you are going to fall short of the standards that you have set. And when you do that, you as the leader need to admit it. Even though that may seem a little vulnerable for you, you may think, oh, why would I do that? How could I admit that stuff to my team? Well, you know what? They know it anyway. Why don't you just admit the obvious? And then from there, you can have that kind of trust level with them. But when you admit that you fall short of your standards, they will have more respect for you when you do that. And they will have more respect for the standards you have set because you, even as the leader, have admitted when you've fallen short. So I've talked about what you need to teach, what you need to celebrate, what you need to model. And that is also about what you permit. Because if you allow things to take root within your organization that go afoul of what you teach and what you celebrate and what you model, it will undo everything that you have already tried to put in place. So you have to watch out for what you permit. It's not a one and done. You have to continue doing this over and over and over again. My friends, it's important for you to realize what you need to be doing as a leader to create this kind of culture, because people want to be led. They want to be activated. They want to become what they can be. You can do so much more than make money or make revenue. You can make a life. You can be so much more than just a boss. You can be an agent of transformation. You can do so much more than make money in this situation here. You can make a difference. Thank you very much.